$1 billion being withheld from Illinois until it shows receipts on what it's using certain types of federal tax dollars for in the welfare program. And now the federal government's facing a lawsuit from multiple states. Welcome in. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and wake up with us here at the Center Square each and every weekday morning. And you can also get the latest headlines in your inbox by going to the Center Square/Illinois, click newsletter, and sign up today. I'm Greg Bishop, editor of Illinois at the Center Square, host of Illinois in Focus Daily, and we got big things coming up, so definitely want you to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, and we'll keep you posted. But let's get into this with the federal government and the Trump administration saying that there's hot spots of activity of potential fraud, questioning whether there's a unofficial patronage system going on where certain nonprofits will get funds from the states that matches federal tax funds and goes into these nonprofits or these other organizations, and there's a certain type of political under the table agreement, and that's kind of what is being alleged, though not specifically, because the Trump administration is saying we need to see a whole host of information for how you're spending your money. Illinois gets about $412 million from the federal government for child care programs. It gets a whole bunch more for TANF, temporary assistance for needy families, and that fund resource being frozen from Illinois and four other states. And Illinois Attorney General Kwame Raoul, he had a joint virtual news conference with attorneys general from California and New York. Here is Attorney General Raoul from Illinois talking about this particular case.
My office regularly works to investigate and prosecute individuals who defraud Illinois taxpayers. In fact, we have successfully partnered with federal law enforcement agencies, including the DEA, FBI, U.S. Marshal Service, and HHS Office of Inspector General Investigations, to hold individuals accountable for defrauding critical government assistance programs. If the president was serious about rooting out fraud, his administration would be investing more resources in partnering with states and supporting states' efforts to root out fraud and abuse. But the real motivation behind this action is to punish Democrat-led states like Illinois that are disfavored by the Trump administration.
Now, the audits that come out every year, though Illinois' audits are delayed by, 2.5 years. We know what happened in 2023 fiscal year. We kind of know how much we spent in fiscal year 2024 with a interim audit of Illinois' finances by Illinois' comptroller, Susana Mendoza, but the actual audit, that's a third party, detailed hundreds of pages of audit with findings of adverse findings, which are negative, qualified findings that are negative, unmodified findings that are kind of neutral. Those are sprinkled all throughout these audits, and some could point to that and say, well, you've got adverse findings in audits that says you can't track where the money's going. So how can you say that you know there's no fraud or there's no allegations of fraud when you've got an audit that says it's an adverse opinion? They don't know where the money's going on some of these programs, and in particular, one program was a COVID-19 homeowner assistance type of program that had an adverse opinion, and we're talking tens of millions of dollars for that, if not even more. They're questionable as to where those dollars ultimately went, right? Follow the money. So with these audits and they're late and we don't see it until 2.5 years later, what kinds of things are being done there? Maybe that's where the Trump administration's saying, hey, we need to have more information about where this money went. Back to Kwame Raoul, the Illinois Attorney General.
In our lawsuit, we argue that suspending these funds is unconstitutional and unlawful and exercise of power by the president, and is both contrary to law and arbitrary and capricious under the Administrative Procedure Act.
So that's what they're ultimately suing over, saying it's arbitrary and capricious for the Trump administration to say, hold on a second, we're not going to give you any more funds until you show us some receipts. Governor J.B. Pritzker last week said he shows receipts, and there's been no specific allegations of fraud, saying that this is political. Kwame Raoul saying that there's going to be an impact in Illinois with these funds being frozen.
The effects of this action are far-reaching and dangerous. For Illinois alone, the president's action threatens around $1 billion that Illinois families and service providers are counting on. If this attempted freeze were allowed to stand unchallenged, parents of nearly 150,000 Illinois children who receive child care support would be forced to stay at home, causing employers to lose valued employees and businesses to also be impacted. Children are at risk of being placed in unsafe environments. Neither the president nor his administration have offered any evidence to support a specific allegation of fraud in the state of Illinois. We share a commitment to ensuring that taxpayer dollars are spent on programs and services that improve the quality of life for families and vulnerable Americans. But giving states an unrealistic demand for large amounts of sensitive personal information with an even more unrealistic deadline is not a genuine way to combat fraud.
Again, that's Attorney General Kwame Raoul during a news conference with several other attorneys general from across the country, New York, California, and others. And he says that, this is arbitrary and capricious, says that it's, the deadline to turn over what he says was sensitive information to the federal government, which already has access to a bunch of sensitive information, is arbitrary and capricious. But again, you look at the audits, and we'll just pull up the website, app.fac.gov, and search Illinois, and you'll find the documents where it shows what exactly is going on with these audits. And again, this is from fiscal year 23. We'll just search here adverse. All right, so we'll go to adverse, and it'll start popping up, populating, and again, you can see it's a 617 page document. All right, so adverse opinions, it talks about an adverse decision. Here you've got the Crime Victims Assistance Fund and the COVID-19 Homeowner Assistance Fund program. Again, this is from 2023, qualified noncompliance, SNAP. You've got more COVID funds. You've got unemployment insurance. I mean, the unemployment insurance fund, if you recall, it was, $2+ billion of suspected fraud that was there. The temporary assistance for needy families had a qualified noncompliance. So, this is from 2023, and the Attorney General is saying that it is unreasonable for the timeline of the Trump administration saying, hey, we need these documents to prove how this money was spent. While the federal government has no taxes on tips and other gratuities, a state lawmaker here in Illinois is looking to conform that aspect of payroll into state tax code. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Wake up with us for the program here with the Center Square. You can get emailed headlines daily. Go to thecentersquare.com, sign up for the newsletter, and stay plugged in. All right, so last year, big conversation. It was even a campaign pledge from both of the candidates in 2024 to have no taxes on tips. President Donald Trump, when he was running, he announced that policy and talked about it at every campaign rally. Also, no tax on overtime, for instance. But when they did ultimately, after the election, and Trump gets elected, and all the conversation in Congress, they put together that one big, beautiful bill. It had provisions in there about no taxes on tips, no taxes on overtime as well, and also some Social Security provisions for elderly residents to not have to pay certain types of taxes. So that's the federal policy. A lot of states automatically conform with the federal policy so that their federal tax code reflects the taxes in the federal income tax reports. So that means on your federal taxes, if you're a server, if you wait tables, if you get tips of any kind, gratuity, and you have to declare that on your income tax, then in the federal income tax, you're going to get a tax credit. You're going to get, you're not going to have to pay there's no tax on tips up to a certain threshold. And so the federal government has that. States typically conform with that. Illinois did not. They did do a decoupling on a whole bunch of other provisions, but ultimately they just didn't conform to the state, to the federal tax code when it comes to gratuity or the overtime. So Illinois, as it is right now, you're not going to be taxed for your federal income tax when it comes to gratuity, But on the state income tax, you're still going to be taxed on that gratuity. State Representative Anthony DeLuca, Chicago Heights Democrat, he says that it's time to get that policy enacted in the state of Illinois because, well, it's popular policy and people want it.
Open both President Trump and former Vice President Kamala Harris. Well, if everyone remembers, during the presidential campaign of 2024, it was out there in the open. Both President Trump and former Vice President Kamala Harris, they both talked about this issue on the campaign trail. It was a popular issue. It was a bipartisan issue, but Illinois has not enacted it. So I filed House Bill 4329, which would allow the state of Illinois, it would be the vehicle to allow the state of Illinois to take advantage of this deduction on gratuities.
Now, DeLuca is obviously a Democrat from Chicago Heights, and we heard last week Illinois House Speaker Emanuel Chris Welch say that for any policy to advance, he needs 60 Democrats, not any of the Republicans. He didn't consider the Republicans. He wants unity amongst Democrats to advance legislation. So if DeLuca was able to get, 22 Democrats to sign up and all of the Republicans to sign up, he'd have more than the threshold needed to pass it. But will the bill get called? Speaker indicating that a bill won't get called unless it's got 60 guaranteed Democrat votes. Doesn't care about the Republicans. Interesting that he said that. So I asked DeLuca, is he going to be able to get 60 Democrats on board to support this measure?
Well, we've been talking a lot about affordability issues, and you mentioned the speaker, and I know that the speaker gave a speech last week where he talked about affordability issues being the theme of this upcoming legislative session. So several of the bills that I filed, we've talked about a couple of them in the past, about credit card transparency, government credit card transparency. We talked about banning guaranteed income programs, bills that I filed that are good for property taxpayers, good for affordability issues. This is another one of those issues. This keeps more money in people's pockets and helps them deal with the affordability issues that are out there. So I believe if there's enough support to approach it from that standpoint, if we can somehow manage to put the politics of the issue aside, this is good policy.
The politics of the issue is definitely going to come up. It is Illinois, after all, a very political state. And I asked him, but how is he still going to get over the Trump factor in this, right? I mean, this was originally brought forward by President Donald Trump. He says he was out, at a dinner, and the server suggested no taxes on tips, and he thought it was a great idea, so he just threw it out there, and Kamala Harris ultimately conformed to that as well with her campaign. But Trump won and got the policy implemented on the federal level. So how can you disassociate that policy from Trump in a Democrat state like Illinois, with a Democrat looking to get other of his caucus to sign up for this no tax on tips? How do you get over that Trump factor?
Well, because for Democrats who would never consider supporting this because this was a President Trump supported initiative, I would just say that former Vice President Kamala Harris campaigned on it and supported it as well.
Now, something else to consider here is not just the Trump factor and how that might play into whether or not Democrats in Illinois are going to take this up. There's others who come from a more free market perspective that raise the question of, well, listen, a server that makes $45,000 a year, that includes tips, and a secretary that makes $45,000 a year, not tips. It's the same type of that's the same income coming in, but the server is going to pay less in taxes than the secretary, because the secretary doesn't make tips, the server does. So is that fair? Should there instead be some other policy implemented? Maybe, I don't know, lowering the income tax rate for Illinoisans in general, or how do you exactly do that? DeLuca said that he wasn't ready to have that conversation yet about equality in income tax for just the amount of income, not necessarily how that income was derived.
I would answer that's probably step two in dealing with this entire proposal. Step one is passing this bill or passing a version of this bill. I think dealing with those type of hypotheticals could come at a later date, but I don't think they have to be part of this discussion.
DeLuca also answering the question again, and as far as, no overtime, tax on tips for Illinois, and he says it's just really to conform with what's on the federal books right now.
Well, like I said, this was the federal policy. So Illinois has a decision to make whether we want to participate in that federal policy. It's a popular one. It helps with these servers and their affordability issues. We can look at these other comparisons as well. I'm not opposed to that, but this is specific to this issue.
So the no tax on tips, we're going to see that advance at the Illinois Statehouse. The Illinois Senate is in to start spring legislative session this week. The Illinois House comes back next week. Is that going to be top of mind? When they do come back, is investigating fraud going to be top of mind? DeLuca says he's very focused on taxpayer protection.
Well, my highest priority, and I think it's a priority for a lot of folks, but it's been one of mine for years, even though it's come to the forefront now even more than ever, is property tax reform. And, it's really hitting people hard, and it has to be dealt with. The underlying structure of how we deal with property taxes and the formula for property taxes has to be reformed. We can't just throw more money at the same problem in the same setup and the same system, because we will be right back where we are today in 10 years if all we do is send more money towards the system. We have to reform it.
Again, State Representative Anthony DeLuca, some of the conversation I had with him yesterday, talking about the no tax on tip policy he proposed at the Illinois Statehouse, but also talking about just taxpayer protections and looking to address property taxes this spring session. But I also asked him about the heightened sense of fraud investigations that are happening in Minnesota, in particular for welfare fraud. But what about Illinois? I asked him, I said, we get financial reports that come in late. We don't know how our money was spent last year. We know that audits from 2.5 years ago show that there are adverse opinions and qualified opinions that are essentially negative, saying that you can't really track where the money's going for some of these federal taxpayer-funded programs that the state of Illinois handles, from child care assistance to temporary assistance for needy families, SNAP, unemployment. We know about all the fraud in the unemployment program from during COVID. There's billions of dollars. So you've got, the state's handling of federal taxpayer funds. We don't know what the opinions of the auditors are for 2.5 years, and they're adverse and qualified opinions. DeLuca says it's a serious concern.
Well, no one should be opposed, regardless of your political persuasion. No one should be opposed to making sure that our tax dollars are being spent efficiently and effectively. And that if there's any duplication, if there's any fraud, that we should do everything we can to weed it out. So I think we should be looking at it. We should make sure that every dollar is spent in those ways. And where we find where there's problem areas, we have to address it, because we spend a lot of money here in the state of Illinois. People are taxed a lot here in the state of Illinois. And, we have to respond to these pressing issues such as property tax reform. And the decisions that have to be made to reform the property tax system, none of them are easy. None of those are easy choices or decisions that would have to be made. But just increasing taxes to send more money and not reforming the property tax system for property tax relief, it has to be a combination of both, in my opinion. Reform and possibly raising revenue. It has to be a combination of both.
We'll see exactly where this conversation goes with the no taxes on tips and the property taxes and fraud and so on. All of it, of course, we'll keep an eye on it.
We had a press conference last year where we laid out multiple NGOs to the tune of $1 billion where monies are being funneled to non-governmental organizations, tax dollars. So this is a tip of the iceberg. We'll continue to dig in this, find out what more examples we can dig up on this particular issue. But I wanted to bring this to light because this is just one NGO. This is just one issue, but it's a situation where Illinois taxpayers are paying for federal law to be usurped here in the state of Illinois and to impede federal law enforcement. So it's something that we need to talk about.
It's Republican State Representative Adam Niemerg. Chatted with him yesterday about his concerns of a non-government organization getting tax dollars to impede federal law enforcement. The organization he is talking about is Centro de Trabajadores Unidos, and he says that they're getting more than $1 million of your tax dollars and doing things that aren't above board when it comes to federal immigration law. And even, he alleges, going towards impeding federal immigration law. I'm Greg Bishop. I am editor of the Center Square, Illinois. Go to Illinois' page, and you'll be able to stay up on these and other issues and just get headlines in your inbox from all of the Center Square. Go to the newsletter portion, and you can sign up there. So chatted with State Representative Adam Niemerg, Republican from Dieterich, and he talked about this organization that he says is getting tax dollars from you, the state taxpayer.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. So it's to the amount of $1.18 million we've uncovered. This is just another example of a NGO that has zero accountability and is just run amok outside the parameters of state government. And we have a governor and a speaker who are funding an NGO with a mission statement to impede ICE investigations and get in the way of federal law enforcement. They have an active group funded by this $1.18 million from taxpayers of the state of Illinois to impede ICE detainees, to impede cases, and also to impede ICE federal authorities while they are doing their job. So it's a very terrible situation we find ourselves in. And here we go. We see another NGO, another non-governmental organization funded by the taxpayers of the state of Illinois for a political ideological purpose. And furthermore, this violates federal law. So we need a full First off, this needs to stop. Then we need a full investigation of why these monies are being allocated to an organization that is impeding federal law. And then we need President Donald Trump to hold some federal funding coming to the state of Illinois and find out what exactly is going on here. And then we need Pam Bondi to conduct a full investigation on why the state of Illinois is blocking federal law and federal immigration authorities.
So let's go check the comptroller's checkbook, and you can do this yourself. Go to the comptroller's website, openbook.illinoiscomptroller.gov, and you'll be able to find this. And if you type in really any organization you want to see how much money they're getting from you, the taxpayer, you can type that in. So we've got Centro de Trabajadores Unidos. You search that, contracts, and it'll pop up. After a bit here of doing all the beep bop boop bop beep bop, and we've got, well, here we go. For several fiscal years,
actual
they've been getting your tax dollars. So in 2015, they got $500,000 from the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. 2023, they got $1 million from DCEO. In 2024, they got 128,000, I should say, dollars. Commerce and Economic Opportunity gave them $250,000 in 2024 also, and in 2024, another grant for more than $500,000. In 2025, you can see those numbers all adding up. So a lot of money there. And Niemerg says it's 1.8 some odd million dollars. What exactly is it this group is doing that Niemerg says is inappropriate, especially when they get state tax dollars? He lays that out.
Well, here's the actual. We can go to their website and you can see this. They have a group, the Southeast Rapid Response Team. It exists to confront the ICE raids and detention and deportation cases affecting our communities. Essentially, they're mobilizing political activists that we've seen all over the country, most recently in Minneapolis, to get in the way of federal law enforcement. So if there is an ICE raid happening in Chicago and there's folks there impeding that investigation, being arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcements, this organization is mobilizing those individuals. Then furthermore, they have a Facebook group, which activates those individuals, gives them talking points, gives them the information they need to combat federal law. It's a situation where we have taxpayers from Illinois paying for an organization that is actively impeding federal law, and they have a mission statement to do just that. Furthermore, another mission statement they have is to root out capitalism in this country, to root out capitalism and to combat climate change and global warming. If this isn't a political ideology that's being funded by the Illinois taxpayers, I don't know what is. Federal immigration authorities are under attack constantly and daily. ICE is under attack daily. And now we have Illinois taxpayers flipping the bill for that to happen, and it has to stop.
Now, Niemerg, again, calling for investigations, calling for federal funds to be withheld, and you heard President Donald Trump in the last segment say this.
If we get rid of fraud and do our job properly on the trillions that are being extorted out of our country from corrupt and incompetent governors like Gavin Newsom, J.B. Pritzker, and Tim Walz, we will very soon have a balanced budget, and that's the kind of money that we're talking about. We're talking about massive amounts of money.
So Trump announcing yesterday he's looking to withhold federal funding from all sanctuary jurisdictions. What that's going to look like, we'll be watching. But in Illinois, Niemerg's watching this very closely, and he says it's just the tip of the iceberg.
This is the tip of the iceberg. We had a press conference last year where we laid out multiple NGOs to the tune of $1 billion where monies are being funneled to non-governmental organizations, tax dollars. So this is a tip of the iceberg. We'll continue to dig in this, find out what more examples we can dig up on this particular issue. But I wanted to bring this to light because this is just one NGO. This is just one issue. But it's a situation where Illinois taxpayers are paying for federal law to be usurped here in the state of Illinois and to impede federal law enforcement. So it's something that we need to talk about.
Now, Niemerg is a Republican in the super minority at the State House, and I asked him yesterday when we chatted last night, will Democrats see this as a problem? What does he think about his colleagues? Can he get them to see this as an issue, or does he think that they're going to turn a blind eye here?
Oh, they're going to look the other way. We've spent close to $3.4 billion on illegal immigration in the state of Illinois already. I don't think the Illinois Democrats care about federal law. I don't think they care about the people of this state. They obviously don't care about the pocketbooks of the taxpayers here in the state of Illinois. So I assume they're going to look the other way. But much like what's happening in Minnesota with Tim Walz and the fraud scandal up there, it's up to us to find these NGOs, root out corruption and fraud at all levels, make things like this go national to bring the spotlight on Illinois to fix this state.
What that spotlight will look like, we'll be seeing and watching and tracking and reporting out to you at thecentersquare.com. Niemerg also talks about just the need for more scrutiny on all of this, and in particular how he says this group, if they're encouraging and organizing people to monitor ICE activities and encouraging them to impede in some way, that they're being put in harm's way.
Absolutely. 100% putting them in harm's way. Anytime you mobilize radical political activists such as these organizations do, and we've seen this all over the country, especially what we've seen in Minneapolis, if we see these organizations putting these people in harm's way, impeding federal law enforcement, bad things happen. We don't want any more loss of life. We don't want that to happen. But when you impede, when you try to hurt a federal immigration authority, these things can go south very, very fast, and we don't want anybody to get hurt. But yes, they're absolutely putting them in harm's way. When you mobilize organizations, when you mobilize people like this, when you put the hate in somebody's heart, these things go south very fast.
And all of this, obviously, after the police-involved shooting in Minnesota of a woman that was blocking ICE traffic and seemed to drive into an ICE officer who opened defensive shots, according to DHS, striking and killing the woman. Obviously, ICE activities drawing a lot of emotional response. And on the other side, you've got a lot of criticism as to the funding and how tax dollars are being used. Niemerg's not the only one that's raised these issues. Republican gubernatorial candidate Ted Dabrowski, who's in the primary March 17th with 3 other Republicans vying for the party's nomination, he held a news conference earlier this month and talked about the tax dollars that are going to various nonprofits.
We have groups doing that here in Illinois, and there's been great work done by Breakthrough Ideas here in Illinois. One of the examples is Trabajadores Unidos, which is United Workers. It's an NGO. It gets millions of dollars from the federal government and the state, and yet that group, I want to read to you what that group is dedicated to, and it's on their website. I read it myself, and it's amazing that we allow our our government to fund these things. So Trabajadores Unidos, it's a subgroup of the community. A subgroup exists to confront the ICE raids and detention and deportation cases affecting our communities. That's one. It also works to dismantle the systems and institutions based on capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy, and climate change that exploit and oppress our community. These are highly political statements on the website, and they're getting federal and state money for that, millions of dollars. And we're seeing that there's lots of NGOs that get that kind of money. So we really need to look at how the government is spending our money.
And we'll report it out to you more and more here with the Center Square.
Can't replace the federal funding. It's too large. And I think the federal government doesn't understand the damage that they're doing to people all across the country. We're not alone in this. It wasn't targeted at Illinois. This is all across the United States, and it's billions of dollars.
It's Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker yesterday talking about the possibility of frozen federal tax funds to the state of Illinois and elsewhere as the budget season kicking off in Illinois next month, with Governor J.B. Pritzker set to deliver his spending plan. But where are we at right now? Obviously, there's a lot of numbers to talk about here. The Illinois budget includes state tax funds, but also federal pass-through funds. So when you hear a lot of the reporting out there about state tax funds, we're only talking about half of the budget, if not less than half. This current fiscal year, we're set to spend $55+ billion, and that is $16 billion more annually than what was spent when Pritzker took office in 2019. And it's about a 40-some-odd% increase in state spending. So you're talking about pretty sizable spending increase, and what are you getting for that? Obviously, in that same time, we've seen a lot of taxes increase. But you can go and take a look at some of this spending yourself. Go to budget.illinois.gov, where you can scroll around and find the fiscal year 2026 information, and you got a budget walk down, which give you an overview of some of the state spending, and all of this is in millions when you look at this chart. So, for instance, total resources, that's the amount of money coming in, $55.2 billion, almost $55.3 billion. All that's coming from individual income taxes, $28.4 billion. That's how much income taxes are derived from individuals in the state of Illinois with that flat income tax. Net corporate taxes, $5.2 billion. You've got sales taxes at $10.7 billion. Utility taxes, $686 million. And other sources at $3.2 billion. So total state sources, $48.3 billion in different types of revenue streams. Then you get other state sources like lottery, gaming, adult use cannabis, $122 million in taxes from that, $281 million in sports wagering, and then other transfers of $1.3 billion, and that could be coming from different funds. So altogether, total state resources, $51 billion. And there are some federal resources there, $4.2 billion for total spend from the state, $55.2 billion. And it gives you even a further breakdown of all of the different sectors where we've seen increases. Again, we've seen a 40% increase plus of the budget since Pritzker took office, but you can also look at some of these line items, and there are significant increases in those line items as well for like healthcare and human services and such. So that's the budget walk down from the Governor's Office of Management and Budget. You can also look at the Comptroller's website to see how we're doing monthly by going and searching for the monthly summary of general funds revenues and expenditures on the Illinois Comptroller's website. And say we want to look at last month. So we'll look at last month's report for fiscal year 26, zoom in a little bit, and this kind of shows you where we're at in the amount of money that's coming in and out from the Comptroller's office. And Comptroller Shoshana Mendoza is the one who cuts the checks. So you can read those reports as well. It's not the only place you can get report. You can also get reports from the Commission on Government Forecasting and Accountability. This is a bipartisan budget group that is made up of equal parts Democrat legislators, equal parts Republican legislators from both chambers. And they produce monthly budgets, and you can see kind of what's inside this most recent issue for December. Another positive month for general funds receipts, elevating first first half gains, fiscal year 26. Looks at revenue tables, closer look at cannabis taxes. Cannabis taxes obviously is very, people want to know where that money's going, and it goes to all kinds of places. Quarter of it, for instance, goes to nonprofit community groups in areas that are considered disadvantaged. So every quarter of a dollar of cannabis taxes that people pay goes to that. And there's, portions for law enforcement and public health and such. But anyways, so you can look at all of this and you read up, and it's very wordy and as far as, having to understand economics, but you can see where we're at compared to last year in, general funds coming in and the change, 5.9% in general funds increasing. So you've got some increased dollars coming in. So what's that going to mean for the state of Illinois as we've looked at this picture here? We're halfway through the fiscal year. So Illinois' fiscal year doesn't start January 1st like the city of Chicago does, for instance. Illinois' fiscal year starts July 1st. So that's why May 31st is kind of that cutoff date for the legislature to approve a budget. In February, you've got the governor that's going to propose his budget during his State of the State and budget address. They used to have those separate, but I think the Rauner administration consolidated that, and Pritzker just continued that. So we'll have that sometime next month. We'll be watching that closely here with the Center Square. So go to thecentersquare.com to stay up to date. But let's hear what Governor J.B. Pritzker said yesterday to the prospect of the state of Illinois missing out on federal tax funds that President Donald Trump has been threatening to withhold from the states. And all of this is going to be tied up in the courts, but Pritzker saying that these most recent proclamations for cutting or freezing certain funds, it's going to hit the states really hard, including the state of Illinois.
Well, as you know, we're introducing our budget, in another month, so we're going to be looking at how we might be able to continue to support with more state dollars than we already have, so that we can maintain particularly, you've hit on it, it's particularly the personnel that work at these healthcare institutions that do just amazing work. Working at a substance use treatment center, or working with mental health patients, it's hard work. And by the way, these people go to school for quite some time to get prepared for that kind of a job. If we lose them, they will go get a job somewhere where they can, and if we lose them to the state of Illinois, it means, again, that we're losing the opportunity to serve people in our state. So again, with all of the funding cuts that the administration has taken away from us, it has been probably the most challenging year of my governorship, because we can't replace the federal funding. It's too large. And I think the federal government doesn't understand the damage that they're doing to people all across the country. We're not alone in this. It wasn't targeted at Illinois. This is all across the United States, and it's billions of dollars.
Now, Governor J.B. Pritzker, of course, has proposed increasing taxes on the wealthy. He put a lot of his own money politically into the income tax change that was proposed to voters but rejected back in 2020. And that constitutional ballot referendum did not get the required votes that was necessary to change Illinois' flat income tax to one that has higher rates for higher earners. But there seems to be another effort underway that would increase a surcharge on those making more than $1 million. And one proposal is that those making $1 million would pay into a property tax fund of sorts to help offset high property taxes elsewhere. You've got other ideas of how exactly that's going to play out for the economy, and will that just mean people are moving to other states to get away from the millionaires surcharge? So you're going to hear a lot more about this, and I think it's something that Speaker Chris Welch last week at the City Club of Chicago made clear is going to be part of the discussion this budget year.
There's a lot of folks in this room that will tell you that Illinois has a revenue problem. Some will disagree with that passionately, and we're allowed to do that. But some believe we have a revenue problem. And, quite honestly, to solve a lot of the issues that we're going to have to address over the years, we're going to have to honestly address that revenue question. And I have said this in every town hall meeting I've had So I'm not breaking news that I believe we should tax rich people. We should tax millionaires, very similar to the way they do it in Massachusetts. A surcharge tax, we tested that twice on a ballot, and people still support surcharge taxes on millionaires. We know we have a revenue problem, and if we had more revenue, and that's one way to do it, you can address pensions. But I think we should have these discussions.
These discussions going to be had all, well, spring long during spring legislative session. And we've got the team with the Center Square to keep an eye on that and inform you all throughout. But when we talked with Democratic State Representative Anthony DeLuca about the prospect of millionaires surcharge, he says, even as a Democrat, he wants to make sure that spending is under control.
Well, if there's going to be, and that's kind of what I'm referring to, if there's going to be an attempt to raise additional revenue, however that's going to look, in my opinion, it has to come with reforms. Can't just throw more money at the same problem. So unless we have real structural reform with our property tax system, and some of those are difficult choices, then, I don't know how you can just raise the revenue but not do the work on the other side. Has to be a combination of both.
So DeLuca seeming to come from it from a fiscally conservative point of view. State Representative Adam Niemerg, a Republican, he says that it's no wonder the state is looking to increase taxes on millionaires. He says that Democrats are poorly managing the state's taxpayers' resources.
Unfortunately, Speaker Welch is talking about additional taxes. He's teeing up additional taxes to tax more in the state of Illinois. He just said that just recently. About raising taxes. I think he told you that they're going to look at raising taxes. So instead of cutting costs, cutting spending, they continue to look at tax and spend.
So the State House going to be full force, not this month per se, but a little bit next month, definitely in March and April, and May is going to be an absolute marathon session to come together for a budget, right? But in the meantime, you're going to hear all kinds of other issues being brought up, including the issue of property taxes. State Senator Willie Preston, he had a news conference earlier this week in Springfield, and he talked about a new group he's wanting to start to ensure that there's focus on property tax fairness in a state that has the highest property taxes in the nation.
When it happens, the family doesn't just lose the house, they lose all of the equity in the home, sometimes a lifetime of work, while investors walk away with a profit. Let me emphasize what this bill does not do. It does not forgive taxes. It does not let anyone skip responsibility. It does not harm municipalities. In order for us to really get the reforms we need, we're going to have to work in a bipartisan fashion to make sure that we have complete buy-in throughout the state of Illinois.
We need a forensic audit on all of this, the whole school system, even the charter, all of that, because that's the only way we're going to be able to clean up some of this swamp.
So you heard from Zoe Lee from Chicago Flips Red talking about the need for audits, and that conversation's also ongoing, and whether or not the state's going to get a handle on some of those audits that have already been published from 2.5 years ago, showing adverse opinions in state spending and handling of federal resources, showing qualified opinions, both of which are negative, indicating that auditors couldn't track the dollars and follow the money. Is anything going to be done about that at the State House? From audits from 2.5 years ago and beyond, we don't know what we spent last year, and here we are getting ready to talk about crafting the fiscal plan for the next fiscal year, and we're not going to know what we spent in this fiscal year, until 2.5 years after it's done. So a lot of things in Illinois that have to be, I guess, have a light shined on it. Are non-government organizations with a extremist political philosophy getting your tax dollars in the state of Illinois? An indication seems to point that way, with legislators and other groups taking a look at Illinois tax dollars and where those are going. And joining us now to talk more about that is Jeannie Ives from Breakthrough Ideas, former state legislator, also a former Republican gubernatorial candidate in a primary. Representative, you guys have tackled a lot with Doge, Illinois. Tell us, this week, Representative Adam Niemerg re-elevated the issue of a group getting state tax dollars, and he says that they're working to actively impede ICE. Is this group, the, what is it, Workers United Center, are they the only group that's getting this level of money from state taxpayers?
Oh, no, not at all. There's a number of politically activist groups that are considered nonprofits, and they say that they provide particular services to their community, but actually they really are, they're the instigators for all of your No Kings marches, your Take Down Tesla, your Hands Off Chicago. All those marches come from these activist groups. They generate the people to show up, and they're getting paid lots of money from the taxpayers of Illinois to do so.
So what should legislators do here, right? I mean, because we're in the beginning of the budget process. Should they be combing through the budget more to make sure that these non-government organizations are actually doing work to help those who fall through the cracks versus going out and conducting politics?
Well, it's interesting because right now they're already talking about there being possibly a $2.2 billion deficit in the upcoming budget. And of course, they are immediately saying we need a millionaires tax. No, actually, we just need to cut spending. And the best way that they can cut spending with actually not harming any of the core programs that citizens require or actually rely on, like infrastructure, education, all that, is they can look at the nonprofits that they are funding. And last year, our group put out all those nonprofits at our dogeil.com website. And we put all the grants in there from FY 2025. And now we have the grants in there from FY 2026. So people can peruse this entire list of nonprofits. I mean, there's thousands of nonprofits receiving literally over billions of dollars to do particular services, but actually they are politically active groups instead. I'd like to highlight another one, which I have always had a problem with, and that's the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. Now, this organization gets over $42 million from state taxpayers, but literally you will see ICIRR on all the protest signs at all the protests that you see in Chicagoland. So instead of actually doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is quote unquote welcoming centers, immigrant support, which I disagree with, we should be funding also. They are actually just doing political activity to thwart ICE activity in the state of Illinois. This organization's particularly should be investigated for what they are spending the money on. Again, one of the other problems with these nonprofits is that you can't FOIA them. There's no Open Meetings Acts, and yet the majority of their money is coming from state taxpayers with zero accountability. And so I think legislators really need to hone in on this, ask questions, and get to the bottom of where this money is going. Because ICIRR, I mean, actually last January, they were one of the groups to sue the Trump administration over raids targeting the sanctuary movement. This is what they are politically involved in. It is not actually delivering services. And, you know, if I could just say one more thing here about this, like one of the things that they are involved in is welcoming centers. Well, that is a grant line that has grown enormously under Governor Pritzker. And we're spending upwards of $25 million just on welcoming centers in 2015 fiscal year. We were only spending about $1.1 million on welcoming centers. So this grant line has grown substantially under Governor Pritzker. Why? Because it is a political organization. It's a way for him to get out the vote. And I say that unabashedly, and I know that that's the truth.
Jeannie, when we talked with the Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services about the federal funding freeze for TANF and for child care programs, I mean, they said that they suspect there's some kind of unofficial patronage system going on here. You've been in politics. You now are outside watching. And tell us a bit about that idea of the kind of unofficial patronage that there allegedly is going on, not just possibly in Illinois, but elsewhere throughout the country.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Minneapolis opened up a can of worms, and now every single state and certainly major cities need to be investigated for where their money is going and how they're padding their political activity, working through non-government organizations. I will say this, we even went so far as to start investigating some of these daycare sites, some of them that are state-funded daycare sites. I went to one particular state daycare, and I looked at their webpage, and it wasn't hard to understand that they are also a political entity, because under the resources area, they basically said, here's how you sign up to vote. And they had 3 different links to how you could become a voter in the state of Illinois. What does that have to do with providing daycare services in the state? No, these are definitely organizations that are there to up the vote for the Democrats and to provide political activity.
And we're talking with Jeannie Ives with Breakthrough Ideas and host of The Real Story with Jeannie Ives about your tax dollars in this beginning of budget season for fiscal year 2027. Obviously, Jeannie, with the possibility of federal funds being frozen, it's going to put a hindrance on the budget plan for the coming fiscal year to cover major resources and major programs. And the Pritzker administration and legislators are talking about a surcharge on millionaires. They'd have to amend the Constitution for that. Is there enough money, you think, in the budget to find the savings and, as they call, efficiencies or cuts? Is there enough of what you've seen in your going line by line, looking at NGOs, looking at other programs? Is there enough there to shore up the state's spending?
Absolutely. There's absolutely no reason to increase taxes in the state. There, again, if you go to our website, you just start to scroll through some of the nonprofits getting grants or the chambers of commerce getting grants, and they literally aren't doing anything. It's just going straight to their bottom line. You've got, Maddie's Mitten March, which I had highlighted before, getting a $320,000 grant for a new store. One other organization, it's called SWAP, Southwest Organizing Project. I think this is a total fraud, quite frankly. They're receiving, I think it's $40 million. They receive a lot of money for parent mentoring, another program that is now up to $20 million, where just a decade ago, we were only funding it at $1 million. You have to really, really try hard to find that there's any results for the money given. So this is all stuff that could easily be cut out of the budget without cutting core services. And that's what they need to do in this state first.
Jeannie, one other thing here when it comes to following the money, right? And that's ultimately what you're trying to do here, highlighting these grants and highlighting these budget lines. We don't get actual audits where auditors are able to determine exactly where that money's going, and in some instances having adverse audit opinions or qualified audit opinions that are both negative, saying they can't really track the money. We don't know about these things for 2.5 years. They're going to be putting together the budget for the coming fiscal year, and we don't even know what we spent in 2025 fiscal year.
Well, that's true. The state is always late on its audits. And even then, when you go to the Auditor General and you look at all their audit reports, nearly every single audit report from every agency shows that they are not doing their job correctly. Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, honestly, they should just be eliminated from the budget. There's no need for them to be giving out $500 million to the Chinese Communist EV battery plant Goshen. There's no need for them to be giving Rivian $827 million when they haven't produced profit on a single vehicle. And so that entire organization should just be eliminated. You could save a lot of money right there. But I mean, every audit from the DCEO, the most famous one being that, guess what? When we looked at the jobs that were supposed to be related to the CEJA or the energy bill from 2021, they never created the jobs that they were told to create for over 3 years. So yes, we have a problem. Actually, you have legislators propose all these like feel-good projects, and then there's no follow-up. The money goes out. It's just run through a bunch of nonprofits or other programs with no accountability. And that's the problem in the state of Illinois. We need to really tighten the ship when it comes to that. Well,
Jeannie, we'll definitely be talking about this as the weeks and months progress, because budget season is going to come at us quicker than we know it with all kinds of hearings, but we won't really know those fine details on all of these line items until, I don't know, you've been there before as well, estimating what it's going to be early morning hours of May 31st into June 1st. So we'll see what happens.
But here, I will say this, Greg, just in closing, honestly, at least we have started the process of elevating the conversation, showing them that we've got billions of dollars going to nonprofits with no accountability. And at least we have some legislators, and I really appreciate them, looking at these grant lines. We just need more people concerned about where their money goes, and they need to start doing this. I highlighted a story about the Prairie Food Co-op in Lombard. That's a total scam as well. I mean, we're just, I could go on and on and on with one story after another about how they're wasting your money on nonprofits, groups that with no accountability are receiving money from the taxpayer.
Well, again, we'll talk more about this in the weeks and months ahead. Jeannie Ives, greatly appreciate you taking the time here with the Center Square.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. It is Illinois in Focus Daily, each and every weekday morning with you. I'm Greg Bishop. Be sure to wake up and get the headlines in your inbox at thecentersquare.com, where you can not just get Illinois headlines, but also headlines from across the country. Again, go to thecentersquare.com. All right, much more coming up.